It was 1:45 a.m., and the L train rumbled softly through the night. The car was almost empty, save for one man who thought he was alone. He sat near the window, his phone lighting up his face as he scrolled through emails, trying to stay awake after a long shift at work. But then, out of the corner of his eye, something flickered, a movement in the reflection that shouldn't have been there. Hi everyone, you're listening to Thousand Fragments. The moment no one saw, the memory no one kept. I'm bringing it back. Drop a comment below and let me know where you are today. I'm all ears, and let's begin. Robert had lived in New York City for 3 years now, navigating its endless rhythm like a second heartbeat. A college student by day and a barista by night, he spent most of his time buried under textbooks or serving coffee to people who barely noticed him. Tonight was different though. Tonight felt heavier, quieter. As the subway emptied stop by stop, Robert found himself one of the last passengers aboard. His destination, Wilson Avenue, loomed closer on his screen. Just another late-night commute home. But then, everything shifted. In the dim glow of the subway lights, reflected against the darkened windows across from him, Robert caught sight of someone, or rather, something asterisk. At first, he dismissed it as a trick of light, shadows playing games with tired eyes. But when he turned his head fully toward the source, there was nothing but an empty seat. Yet in the reflection, she remained. An old woman cloaked in a long dark coat, her face obscured by shadow. Her posture was unnaturally still, her presence heavy enough to fill the entire car. The air grew colder, the silence more oppressive. Robert hesitated before glancing down at his phone again. Wilson Avenue flashed on the display. This was his stop. Relief washed over him briefly, until her voice whispered faintly into the quiet space around him. "You really shouldn't be here," it said, not loud, not clear, but unmistakable nonetheless. His pulse quickened. He stood abruptly, grabbing his bag and stumbling toward the door. The announcement crackled through the speakers just as the train slowed to a halt. Doors slid open with a pneumatic hiss, releasing him onto the deserted platform. Fresh air hit his lungs like salvation, but even outside, the feeling lingered, an invisible weight pressing against his shoulders. When he looked back through the glass doors, she wasn't sitting anymore. Instead, her silhouette pressed close to the window, staring directly at him. And worse yet, she waved goodbye. Back at his tiny studio apartment, Robert couldn't shake the image. Who or what had that woman been? Why did she seem so wrong, so unnatural? Over the next few days, fragments of stories began to surface online. Urban legends about ghostly figures haunting late-night subways, tales of passengers disappearing without a trace after seeing strange reflections in the windows. Each account added fuel to the fire burning in Robert's mind. Was this all paranoia, or had he truly encountered something beyond explanation? One evening, unable to focus on studying, Robert decided to dig deeper. He visited the local library, sifting through decades-old newspapers stored in microfiche archives. There, buried within yellowed pages, he uncovered reports of unexplained incidents involving the L train during the early 1982. Passengers claimed they saw an elderly woman dressed in black standing between them and the tracks during late-night rides. She never spoke, never moved, just watched silently until they fled. Some swore their lives changed afterward, plagued by nightmares or inexplicable feelings of dread. Yet no official record existed. No investigation ever confirmed these accounts. It was as if the city itself wanted to forget whatever happened underground those nights. Robert returned home haunted by questions. Days turned into weeks, and while the memory faded somewhat, it never fully disappeared. Then came the call, a voicemail left late one night when he least expected it. A distorted recording played back through his speakerphone, static interrupting every other word. What little he could make out chilled him to the bone. They're watching. Don't get on the train. Alone. Curiosity gnawed at him relentlessly. If this was real, if others had experienced similar encounters, then why hadn't anyone spoken out? Determined to uncover the truth, Robert reached out to online forums dedicated to paranormal phenomena. To his surprise, dozens responded, sharing eerily consistent experiences. Many mentioned the same figure, an old woman in a dark coat, always appearing late at night, always associated with tragedy. One user shared a particularly chilling detail. During the infamous blackout of 1977, several eyewitnesses described seeing her wander aimlessly along the tracks beneath Manhattan. By morning, those witnesses were gone, leaving behind only whispers of fear among commuters. Haunted by both fascination and fear, Robert made a decision. If this mystery consumed him further, he would confront it head-on. On a crisp autumn night, armed with little more than courage and determination, he boarded the L train once again, choosing the very same car where the encounter took place. At first, nothing seemed unusual. The usual hum of wheels against rails filled the air, punctuated occasionally by announcements echoing through the tunnel. But as midnight approached, the atmosphere thickened. A sudden chill swept through the car, freezing breath visible in the air. Robert glanced nervously around, half expecting to see her appear. Nothing happened initially, but soon enough, the sound of soft footsteps echoed through the nearly empty subway. Not mechanical clatters of shoes hitting metal floors, but deliberate steps, measured and slow. Someone or something was walking alongside the train. He froze, heart pounding wildly. Through the grimy window beside him, shapes began forming in the darkness beyond. They weren't human, not entirely. Limbs stretched too far, torsos twisted impossibly, faces hollowed out like masks carved from shadow. And then she appeared, the old woman, stepping forward amidst the chaos. Her gaze locked onto his, piercing through the barrier of glass and distance. For a split second, Robert thought he saw her smile not kindly, not warmly, but cruelly, knowingly. Then the lights went out. When power returned moments later, the car was eerily silent. Everyone else had vanished. Robert was alone once more, except now he understood exactly how dangerous that might be. Panic clawed at his chest, urging him to run, to escape, but the doors wouldn't open. Trapped inside, he listened intently as the whispering started, a low murmur that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. Words slithered into his consciousness, unintelligible yet undeniable. And then, the reflection reappeared. Only this time, it wasn't hers alone. Others joined her, crowding the space behind her in the mirror-like glass. Their forms bent unnaturally, limbs overlapping grotesquely, faces blank and lifeless. One stepped forward, reaching toward him with skeletal fingers. Another tilted its head, mimicking curiosity or hunger. Robert screamed, bolting upright and slamming his palm against the emergency brake button. The train screeched to a halt, jolting violently. Outside, workers rushed in, confused but concerned. They pulled him off the train, guiding him safely to the surface. Above ground, reality snapped back into place. Cars drove past, streetlights buzzed, and pedestrians hurried along their paths. Yet Robert knew deep down that some mysteries refused to stay buried. Weeks passed, and Robert tried desperately to move on. Therapy sessions helped marginally, providing tools to cope with lingering anxiety. But one question haunted him above all others. What became of those trapped within the system? Were they still out there, riding endlessly through the dark tunnels, prisoners of forces no one dared name? Months later, Robert stumbled upon a final clue hidden deep within the archives. An article dated 1983 detailed the disappearance of multiple individuals following a freak accident during the blackout. Surveillance footage showed none entering the station, yet each appeared suddenly on the platforms afterward. Investigators theorized mass hallucination caused by stress and fatigue. Others suggested darker possibilities. Among the missing was a woman described perfectly: tall, gaunt, draped in a long dark coat. Witnesses recalled her eerie calmness, her ability to stand untouched amid chaos. Could she have been responsible, or merely another victim ensnared by whatever lurked below? The answers eluded him, perhaps intentionally. Whatever force manipulated the reflections, altered perceptions, and stole lives clearly didn't want to be understood. Still, Robert vowed silently to continue searching. Because if even one person remained trapped within the labyrinthine underworld of New York's transit system, they deserved to be remembered, deserved to be saved. And that was another story lost in time. But stay with me, because there's still more waiting in the shadows. What do you think happened to the passengers who disappeared? Let me know in the comments below. Every piece of the puzzle brings us closer to understanding and maybe even freeing those who walked into the unknown.